Hey everyone, Erin from the Impatient Gardener here. Welcome back to my series of pretty detailed garden tours that I've been taking you around the yard on. Now we've already done 3. We've done basically the beds that are closest to the house. And I've explained that these are beds that I put in higher maintenance plants, a lot of annuals, a lot of color, things that need fussing over, which I think makes sense for my house. I'm there all the time. It's not that I set aside time to just work in those beds necessarily. It's that I'm just near the house, and so I'm out on the patio, so I'm deadheading or watering or whatever anyway. But today we are going to work through a lot of the beds. We're going to take off a big chunk of the garden today, and we're going to work along what is the north side of the house, or I should say to the north of the house. And I'll just give you some perspective so you can figure out where we are. So in a previous video, I showed you this little corner. This extends off of the side yard here. This is the Aurelia Silver umbrella, and if we pan around, I'll try to go slowly, you'll see over here is where we're going to be working. Now first of all, a couple of people have asked for updates on what the ferns are looking like. This is not necessarily an area that I count as garden because these are just ostrich ferns that I presume planted themselves here or spread here. Maybe somebody planted them at some point. They are very tall, but as you can tell, this is what happens over summer. Some of them start to flop. So they're past their peak height, although their peak height is still, I mean, here, let me go a quick stand over there and we'll see just how tall these are. So whatever, they're a little bit over my head. But today I want to crack off these beds that are on the north side of the house, which will include the bed that I did with Roy Diblik last year. So because it's in the shade and it is very hot today, we're going to start in this tiny little corner over here. Now, this bed is anchored by another Norway spruce. These Norway spruces grow so fast here. And so I'm constantly dealing with a challenge here of water. So I do have a lot of things planted as ground cover underneath that spruce, but honestly, it's very difficult to get things to take hold because it's extraordinarily sandy in this spot. And it's also very dry, obviously. So it's tough to get things to grow here. Now I have moved some hydrangeas here over the years. I can't actually tell you what hydrangea this is. I know it looks like an Annabelle. I don't think it is an Annabelle. I actually think it's maybe like an Incredible. But because it doesn't get a ton of water or a lot of sun for that matter, the flowers stay pretty small on it. This is maybe like a Firelight tidbit or something. I'm pretty bad about, oh, hang on, I think there's a label on that one. I'm pretty bad sometimes about making sure to hang on to labels, and sometimes they go missing. This guy right here, who is looking quite chlorotic, I would say, in need of a little tender loving care, is a quince. This is the peach one, which is really pretty. It bloomed this year. It's really gorgeous. Quinces are tough shrubs, at least in my opinion, because they don't look great for a lot of the year, but when they do look great, they're really beautiful. And then I have some, I think this might be like a knockout rose. It's a rose that I was sent, and tell you what, this rose does great. Look at how good that foliage is. It has red flowers on it, which is kind of why it got stuck over here, to be honest. But that foliage looks better than any other rose in my garden right now, so that's saying something. And there is an oak leaf hydrangea back here that is very slow to get established, partly because the deer frequent this area. So again, I've made use of lamium as a ground cover here. Lamium grows pretty much anywhere, which I find to be very helpful. So as we move this way, we get more into sort of a more cultivated area. I mean, this spot over here, you know how this goes with gardens. Sometimes you sort of focus on one area and then it stretches the other way. Now in the back here, finally, I just want to point out that the phlox are finally blooming. Deer love phlox, and the deer have been nibbling on these phlox all year, so they're finally getting going, which is really nice. Now, unfortunately, I can't tell you what this really bright one is. This was a pass-along plant from my mom, who doesn't know what it is either. It's a very old variety, so it's nothing that came out in the past 20 years, but it does well for her, and it's doing well here too. This is, I believe, this is a proven winner's variety. I believe it's called Opalescent. Very pretty. I think this is a really pretty phlox. Now, I like really brightly colored phlox, so I think it happens to look quite good with that bright one behind it. I have one more phlox in here. This one I do have a name for, and it's this beautiful coral. Now, the only thing I'll say about that is that it does not look great with that kind of purpley one, but it's a beautiful phlox, and I would love to have more of this. And this is called Luminary Sunset Coral, and that's a proven winner's one as well. Now, along the front here, let's just talk echinacea quickly. This echinacea you're going to see more of shortly. I planted a whole bunch of these last year from plugs. This is pink parasol. I think it's a real stunner. I like the form of this. I like it when the petals are kind of down like that. But this is the Price is White, and this is a fabulous white echinacea. I'm going to show you White Swan shortly in another garden. I like them both, but this is certainly, I mean, the size of the cones on these is really pretty spectacular. This is Back in Black sedum, another dark sedum. I've shown you a few in some other videos. So far, really impressed with this one. It was only new last year, so I'm just kind of getting used to it, but I quite like it. So this is Serendipity allium. Another great summer blooming allium. There's several of them. This is a great one as well. I do have one more. This is a new one this year. It's real tiny, this little sedum. And this one's called Midnight Velvet. And this is from that Rock and Grow sedum line from Proven Winners. I mean, it's just getting going. It's hard to see what it's going to do. But so far, I prefer the Back in Black to that. In the back here, I have a little bit of Pygnanthemum muticum growing. I have a lot of that growing elsewhere in the garden that you'll see at some point, but excellent plant. Pollinators love it. It does well over here, and it is totally deer resistant, so that's quite helpful. So I replanted this corner last year, and I'm quite happy with how it looks. So this is germander down here, which is done flowering, but I'm leaving those flower stalks there. We have stackies, probably Humilo or Summer Romance. Now, normally I wouldn't deadhead this, but we had a little miscommunication, and these got deadheaded. But I don't prefer to have these deadheaded unless they're floppy or really making a mess, because I think they look much better with the, you know, with the spent flowers on them. And I've never gotten a rebloom no matter what. The grass here is Carex montana. Which is a little flat right now, but I like the general form of it. I think if we had had more rain, it wouldn't be quite so flat. And then we've got a few little geraniums along the front here. And then we move along, we've got some more alliums. And then we've got Autumn Bride Heuchera, which is Heuchera villosa Autumn Bride, which is, I've told you about this plant before. Absolutely fabulous plant, and really one of the only heucheras I bother with anymore. Now I do have some Weigela in here. This is my Monet. I believe this is the pink one, and I have the purple one over there. Neither one of them, they're in, I think, too much shade to get good color on them, but it's one that you don't want to put in too much sun because they will quickly fry out if you do that. And then over here, I just have a very large patch of lamb's ear. I just transferred this from another garden. It fills this spot. You know, it's nothing special, but I'm happy that this spot is filled. And behind this, you're going to see a lot of mulch. I just cleaned this area out. It was really overrun with thistle. In fact, I see some thistle behind it still that's still there. So I will plant something here, but I just wanted to get that thistle out of there and then lay down a nice thick layer of wood chips so that it's not at least going to be thistle territory. So we are at the bridge here, and just to give you perspective, this is Roy's garden over here. This is the garden that kind of was an offshoot of Roy's garden last year, but I want to walk you around this other side first because I kind of envision this garden as kind of part of this as well. This is my pufferfish hydrangea that I planted last year from a quart. It has not bloomed. It's done nothing. It has been eaten on a little bit by deer. I think it'll be good to go once we get going, but I haven't seen any flowers or anything from it, mostly just because the deer have gotten after it. This is Glow Girl Spirea, which is chartreuse normally, but in the sun and later in the summer, it does turn just green. This whole area was reworked last year, so everything here is sort of consider it newly planted, basically. I'm gonna walk back up here so that the sun is not right in your eyes when we look at this. So right here is a gold tower, golden sentinel, something Ginkgo. And it was supposed to have a leader because it's sort of a tree form Ginkgo, but when a tree was being taken down in this area at some point when it was young, it fell on this. And so it got completely smashed to the ground, and it did regrow. But the problem is if you can see this, the leader now goes off like this. So I just let this be. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. I still think it's pretty. I think the leaves on this one are particularly, I mean, they're quite pretty. They're not your sort of typical Ginkgo leaves. They're very pretty. It does get to be a beautiful golden color in fall. Now the hostas that I have back here are quite big and quite nibbled on now by slugs. We finally are starting to have the slugs come because we got a little bit of rain. And I couldn't tell you what these are because early on in this garden, I belonged to a plant co-op, and it was basically to buy plugs. Someone would buy plugs from wholesalers, they'd sell them in this co-op. And so much of my garden was established from these plugs, and I had bought a ton of hostas at the time. Indiscriminately, I just bought whatever was left because they would have to sell certain trays to fill trays. So I would just buy whatever was left to fill a tray. And I would end up with these hostas, none of which I paid any attention to. So these are all have been moved around from that. So they're probably all been here for 20 years in one place or another in my garden. So this area was all redone last year. This whole bed, because this was part of the area that was ripped apart when we had some septic work done. So this whole garden was redone at the same time that I worked on that garden with Roy. So I will say, you know, no garden is perfect from the get-go, and this is certainly an example of that. First of all, I planted really tightly because I didn't have to worry about weeds, and I'll tell you what, it worked. Very little weeding gets done in this garden. But I did lose something. I don't really know exactly what was planted, but like right here in this spot, there's just nothing there. So I actually, when I bought that load of plants, I don't know if you saw that video, but a garden center near me had a sale, $60 for everything you could jam on a cart. So I bought a bunch of Angelonia, and I filled in with some Angelonia just for this year, but there is a planting opportunity here for sure. This is Galenia right here, which is sort of flopped over, but that's Bowman's root. Very pretty plant. And I just let it flop. I mean, I'm not going to go around and stand everything up, and it can still be pretty without that. In the center here, that is standing up, you see Phlomis. And this Jerusalem sage is, I believe, the common name for it. It looks as beautiful out of flower, I think, as it does in flower. I think these seed heads are really pretty fantastic, and they certainly offer just great height in this garden. So maybe I'll even just add more of that. I'm not sure. In the front here is Carex divulsa. This was a grass I picked up at Northwind Perennial Farm, not knowing much about it, and I really like it. It's got really nice form. It gets really pretty black flower heads on it. These are the seed heads now, but really pretty black flower heads on it. It stays upright like this. It's probably 2 feet tall, I would say, and I think it's really a great grass, and obviously you can see that it's got nice movement to it. Also in this bed we have things like, there's some more Stachys humalo in here, we've got some limonium in here, sea lavender, really pretty when that gets into flower. I've got some purple love grass, which is just now starting. I mean, the green part of purple love grass looks messy as heck, but once it flowers, it turns into this cloud of purple that is to die for, but very late in the season in terms of flowering. Aquila moonshine in here, and I'll show you some more flowers as we go around. The flowers start off quite sulfur yellow, go a little bit go a little bit light yellow, and then they turn a full golden yellow on it. I don't prefer the golden yellow color as much as the other ones, but it's all part of the plant. A little bit of Nicotiana that's self-sowed here. I believe, but can't be sure, that this geranium that is here, and there are 3 of them, I believe this is Tiny Monster. It has not bloomed yet. It will bloom late in the year, and it will sort of come down and flop down a bit when it does. I'm going to keep an eye on this. I think I'm thinking about taking one of those out and moving that somewhere else for next year, because it's just kind of a big block right here, and I think I probably planted one too many here. Behind that is an Amsonia. This is Storm Cloud. Of course, that blooms very early in the year, so it's out of bloom, but I feel like Amsonia offers beautiful texture in a garden, and it certainly will offer really lovely fall color. Here's some more of that pink parasol echinacea. So that kind of echoes what's happening back over there. This is Drops of Jupiter Oregano, which is a really pretty plant. Interestingly, big chunks of it died out over winter, but it seems to have recovered with no problem whatsoever. I like it. It's kind of a little bit unkempt. It's got this lighter foliage color. I think it looks nice in this garden, which is clearly a more free-flowing garden. That's Standing Ovation little blue stem right there. So I should probably, actually what I should do is get a few more of those to fill in that hole. I think that would look nice right there. Some Ceslaria autumnalis through here. That's the grass that's right here. A little bit of Geranium macrorrhizum. And then here is, you guys have seen, oopsies, you have seen the tricolor beech before, but this helps you figure out where in the garden you are. So here's the tricolor beech, doing well, getting a little crispy on some of the leaves. It's fine at this time of year. It's doing okay. I will probably throw a hose on it one of these days though, because I haven't made it a point to water that plant specifically yet. So, and then I'll just go as far as this, well, you know what, I should probably cover the whole hot border too. As long as we're over here, we're gonna keep going. Okay, so we've got, this is the original Haas Halo that I planted right here in the front. That was from maybe a 2-gallon container from White Flower Farm 3 or 4 years ago. So like I said, that one is a little bit slower growing, but pretty, it's in a little bit more sun, I should say more late day sun. Probably same hours of sun, but this is a little hotter sun over here. It's hanging in there fine, particularly considering the rain situation. There is a little path through here. I don't know, I take it. I don't know if anyone else does. I've got an Ogon viburnum here, which is huge. Is it Ogon? I always forget. There's Ogon and another one. I think that's what it is. We've got another Incrediball around the corner here. Here's some blue globe thistle. This came from my mom's garden. And the thing with blue globe thistle is that when it's done with the flowers, it looks really wretched and shaggy. But all you have to do is wipe that shag off of there, and that's what's left. And it's just as beautiful as when it's fully in flower. So it's really a plant that once it flowers, it looks good for a long time. A lot of people, for some reason, are afraid of blue globe thistle, I think because they think it's a thistle, which is not, it's echinops. But here, let's clean that one up, because they're really pretty and blue. And all you have to do is take those shaggy, spent petals off of there. And then you go around this corner, and this is not my finest moment probably in the garden. I do have a Hacklocloa over here. I've got some of these, like, I don't even know if this hosta has a name. It's just like the most ubiquitous hosta there is. You can see the deer have been through. I think what the deer do is they walk through the creek and they just come up here and nip. So this bed behind there, I put in some Geranium macrorrhizum. It needs attention, and it will get it at some point. It's just not high on the priority list. A little bit of Pulmonaria down here as well. This shrub right here is Erixa japonica. I got this from Song Sparrow Nursery years ago. They're no longer in business. And that was Roy Clem's nursery. He was a famous peony breeder. Every once in a while they would have an open day where you could go down there and actually shop. And I was down there for one of those, and one of the employees said, "You need this plant." And so I bought it, and it has lived happily in this garden for years. It has a nice shiny leaf. The flowers are extremely insignificant on it. It does smell a little bit like, well, it doesn't smell like anything right now, but in spring, I feel like it smells a little bit like lime. I can prune it to, like, I just pruned a big branch out of it just to make sure this path was clear. I have pruned it for height. It is a very adaptable, tough shrub. Okay, so I'm going to just walk you through that. We're going to go as far as the path. We're going to talk about the hot border. This is what I call my hot border. The reason I created this originally was because, which actually really just happened last year, is when I kind of re-envisioned this guy. Because I do like hot colored plants, but sometimes they don't necessarily work with the palette that I have going in other parts of the garden. So I thought, let's put them all in one spot, which is what I've done here. First of all, this is the big climbing hydrangea that is now on a topped off ash tree. Now this piece of driftwood, which looks kind of weird here, usually supports a clematis, which I felt its tie fell off. So normally that's covered in a clematis, so it makes a little bit more sense to have that sticking there. But this is a little mini buddleia that I got last year. I'm not really a big buddleia fan, but this little mini one is kind of charming to me, especially if it's going to stay this size. Got some sort of fill-in annuals in the front here. This plant that you see through here is all monkshood. I plant monkshood sort of towards the back of the border. It is pretty dangerous for dogs. It's one of those pretty poisonous plants. So I just keep it away from the edge. And it is absolutely beautiful. It's the very last perennial to flower in my garden with a brilliant blue flower, which looks absolutely stunning because that climbing hydrangea will turn bright, bright yellow. And when you get the sort of purpley blue of the monkshood with the yellow behind it, you can't go wrong. This is Helenium. This is Helenium Fuego Salsa maybe, or Fuego Mariachi. I'll have to put the name on the screen because I'm not sure which one this is, but love this Helenium. It just started blooming though. I mean, again, a really late bloomer here and just started. The sedum here is, I believe this is Neon. No, this might be Carl. I think this is Carl. In any case, bright, bright flowers, bright pink that are just starting to open up now. Far preferred, in my opinion, to Autumn Joy. Autumn Joy is too washed out for me personally. So I like that brighter color. This is Windy City Allium. I would say Windy City and Millennium are my two favorite of these summer blooming alliums, but Serendipity is right up there, and there are other great varieties as well. We also have some Rudbeckia in here. I couldn't tell you which variety this is, to be honest. And then some really great echinaceas. These echinaceas have all been samples that have been sent to me, and that red one is doing really well. Probably the showstopper in this garden, I would say. Got another one over here. These are probably from the Sombrero series. And then here's another red one that is very orange red. That's quite pretty. And there's another kind of orange over here. And this is definitely from the Sombrero series. All of them are beautiful and they work perfectly in this bed. Really, really nice in this bed. I also have some Sanguisorba, so if you see this tall thing in the bed that's not blooming yet, that's the Sanguisorba. I tucked in a few of those bananas that I bought on my shopping trip. And then I actually have some hostas in the back here because as you get farther back in this bed, the sun is not on this bed for long. Oh, there is a Baptisia there. It's a yellow one that of course is finished blooming. So some hostas back here, some goat's beard. This is just, I think, the species because it's a nice and tall plant. And then we come over here. So I'm going to now make my way across what I always call the creek. It's a drainage ditch and it's been dry all year. This is where we work into the garden that Roy Diblik designed for me. I mean, sometimes I say with me, but honestly, Roy basically did the design work on it. We collaborated, but he did most of the design work. What I would say about this bed is it probably needed more water than it got this year. But generally it's doing well. And I have made some mental notes about some things that I'll be adjusting next year, which of course Roy always says, like, you don't stop once you plant it, like you keep going, right? It's all about what you make of it after that. Now the echinacea here this is white swan. Now white swan has these sort of reflex, white swan has these reflex petals, unlike the Price is White, which has those flat petals. So it's just a different look. And those go through here. This is Coreopsis that he put in here. These are just kind of getting going, and they will spread throughout here. We've got a white Liatris in here, which is kind of a nice mix. This is Millennium Transparent along the front here. And then these are Paul Peterson and one other Millennias in here. And that's what I would say needs some amending here, is that the Millennia is a little bit thick. So I think I'll probably edit those a little bit next year. There's also some weeds in there. Stachy's Humilo here on the top. There is some Salvia caridana in here, which I did not cut back. I'm sort of experimenting with what plants I like to cut back and try to encourage rebloom, and what plants I think are pretty to leave standing. And so this year I thought I would leave these and just see, you know, sometimes they rebloom through there, and just kind of keep an eye on, no, excuse me, this is Salvia Wisawi. But just keep an eye on how it performs, so I know what I want to do. I don't think there's anything wrong with playing around with that. Lots of Geranium macrorhizum here. Here's the this is the pagoda dogwood, one of the pagoda dogwoods that came out of the pots that we grew a couple of years ago. It's fighting with deer a bit. The deer do go after the pagoda dogwoods when they're young, but they don't when they're older. This is a whole area of a variety of alliums. One that he calls Shorty Eye, I think, or Shorty, that he found at Northwind. I think the rest of these are Summer Beauty. I'm inclined to put in some, you know, some more of those Millenniums, or possibly Windy Cities in here. We've got some Limonium in here, which is a really nice little mixture. They'll fill out as we go along here as well. Now I want to show you this from both angles, because this is really the star of the show right now. This is Dischampia Goldtau in all its blooming glory. It is, I can't describe what this looks like, and I doubt it picks up on the camera, but it is just a cloud of gold. It's like little gold slivers. And I want to show you what it looks like from this side of the garden as well. At night in particular, in the evenings, when the light comes through here, it's really beautiful. In front of that we have some grape blue lobelia. This is Lobelia syphilitica, which is just starting to bloom. Comes up through the Goldtau. It's a native and a heavy reseeder, but Roy said at the time, you know, plant it on a slope because plants don't seed up, they seed down. And we're actually kind of hoping that this establishes, you know, floats down this creek a little bit and establishes farther down the creek, which would be great with me. This is a blue flame iris planted last year, one plant, and it probably already needs dividing. There's another one on this side. And I can't believe how well, they certainly like this spot for sure. Now this garden over here, this was where we had a lot of septic work done as well. And this was kind of a continuation. I worked on this by myself, but I just sort of played off the palette that Roy was using. But of course it gets quite shady over in that corner. There's a lot of holes in this. I just haven't felt the need to necessarily address those rapidly. So we have some more white swan. We've got some of the same grasses that were in there, but what we have that we need to talk about here is this Persicaria, which is called Fat Domino, and it is the best, most showiest Persicaria that I've personally grown and probably seen. It's really fabulous. Coming up through there is a little Arctic willow shrub. This is some Nepeta. I think this is probably just Junior Walker. Just Nepeta that I moved from somewhere else in the garden. And it does great here. And it's perfect and it's deer resistant and it does nicely. This is a clump of 3 double play blue kazoo spirea. Now this area back here can get quite shady. And I think this just proves that that spirea is so adaptable and can really grow in a wide variety of circumstances. Geranium macrorrhizum. I think this is Diane Clare pulmonaria, one of my favorite pulmonarias. And I think you can see why. It is so pretty. And pulmonaria is great over here. Pulmonaria can handle this condition over here. This is, I believe, a proven winners variety from last year. Oh, hang on, we might actually have a tag. Spot On. It's called Spot On Pulmonaria. Carex pennsylvanica kind of stretched through here. Some Geranium macrorrhizum, which you know you find everywhere in my garden. This is Russian cypress microbiota. This will really fill in this area. I mean, this whole bare area that you see right here will get filled in by these 3 shrubs. It's an excellent part shade to shade ground cover, evergreen ground cover. A few ferns down here. I actually think these are Godzilla. I got them last year small and they obviously haven't grown a ton. Now I do have some Thalictrum. I have no idea what hosta that is, by the way. I do have some Thalictrum growing through here, but it's really flopped quite a bit. But it is awfully pretty. And I think this is rhodochiton maybe. I think that's what it is. I think it's Thalictrum rhodochiton. Really the prettiest little tiny flowers, but unfortunately flopped. So better luck next year. And then this area is tough because it's obviously a big slope. So I'm hoping maybe to just get some of these established plants to just kind of spread downhill. I did move this very sad serviceberry from another spot in the garden. All kinds of issues have been going on with it, and we thought we'd give it one more try over here. I don't expect it to make it through the winter, so probably we'll be looking for something else to plant there. But it was worth a try. It was not in great shape when we moved it, and I think it was probably too far gone by that point. If you're looking at this area and wondering what these giant seed heads are, these are rhubarb seeds. So there's always been a rhubarb over here in this part of the garden. I assume somebody planted it at some point, but it grows in full shade. It's some sort of variety that gets going well before the other ones I have in my garden. And this year I sort of forgot about it and started flowering. And I actually thought the flowers were kind of pretty, so I've left them standing because I think that's really quite spectacularly pretty. Probably doesn't do the plant any favors to let it flower like that, but I think it's really pretty. And then we'll just briefly, I will point out what's down here. So this is butterbur. I talk about this plant on occasion. This is Petasites japonicum. There is a relative of this plant that is a horrible invasive that is outlawed in many states and should never, ever, ever be planted. This is not that. However, warning, it is still fairly aggressive. I have planted in an area where it can stretch its legs and I'm not worried about it, but it should be noted, plant with care. But, I mean, I don't know how to, if you can see the size of my hand, that gives you an idea of how big that leaf is. It's huge, and I love it over here. I think it looks like Jurassic along this edge of the stream. And of course, when you look this way, this is all the unmanaged area. We don't do anything over here. So this is mostly ferns. There's some Canada goldenrod in there. This is all stuff that we don't manage. I planted a few trees in here, but other than that, I don't mess with this area, other than to like sometimes go in there and clean out garlic mustard weed or something like that. So this is sort of the view from the other side of all the gardens I've just showed you, which start way over there, come over here, extend all the way over to, you can see the big climbing hydrangea there. So if you've watched the rest of the tours that we've done here, I'm hoping you can kind of see how the garden changes as we get away from the house, and how I've created this garden to allow me to use many different styles of garden design in the same area. Because I can't limit myself to just one style of gardening. I like too many of them, and I don't feel like we should be forced to just pick one and stick with it. So as we move along, I think you can see that there are some real distinctions between different garden areas in my yard. I like that. It keeps me interested. It allows me to play with different plant palettes. And I hope when people walk through my garden, they enjoy it, because it's just a little bit more interesting, and you never really know what's going to be around the next corner. All right, stay tuned for more tours. We're going to wrap this up. I think we have probably maybe 3 more left to go, 2 or 3 more left to go. But you all seem to be enjoying these tours with a little bit more detail, and I'm hoping it gives you something to refer back to in the future as we work on different areas of the garden as well. So I hope you're having a great day in your garden. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.